Yeshua said he'd raise his faithful followers up on the last day. That's a pretty big clue, but what's it mean? This is Off the Cuff, and I'm Steve from TorahFamily.org. Let's talk about it. Okay, let's get right to our text. 4 times here in John chapter 6, Yeshua said he would raise his faithful followers up on the last day. 4 times. Over the years, I've pondered multiple different interpretations to what Yeshua meant when he said this in these verses. We've covered those perspectives in several different teachings. Today, I'll be presenting a different perspective I sincerely believe we need to be open to. It goes in harmony and actually builds upon our 2 teachings titled Before the Harvest and the Prayer of Escape. Now, these aren't needed to understand this teaching. However, you'll find how this one does build on the premise these give. So here it is. I believe it's very possible the last day Yeshua is referring to is the last day of the harvest. That being the day before Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. Remember, Sukkot is the Feast of Ingathering. Thus, the day before Sukkot would be considered the last official day of the harvest. This would also explain why we see this verse in Revelation chapter 7. Right after, we see the 144,000 numbered and the great multitude from every nation, tribe, people, and language wearing white robes before the throne. It says, "He who sits on the throne will spread his tent over them. He makes his dwelling with them." This is Sukkot language. So, is it possible he raises them on the last day of the harvest, the day before Sukkot? Then we see he spreads his tent over them for Sukkot. It fits. It fits good. And as I noted in the teaching, before the harvest at the time of Sukkot includes a wheat harvest and a grape harvest. Thus, the 2 harvests noted here in Revelation 14. A harvest time for 2 crops right at the time of Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. If the resurrection is to happen on the last day of the harvest, the day before Sukkot, this places the 6th seal on that day. Now, though many place the Battle of Armageddon at the 6th seal, we must remember there is a distinct difference between the 6th seal and the Battle of Armageddon. At the 6th seal, noted here in Revelation 6, we see kings, princes, generals, and many more, all hiding from Yeshua's presence, calling out for the rocks to hide them in caves. However, at the Battle of Armageddon, we see these kings and their armies fighting Yeshua as seen here 10 chapters later in chapter 16. Showing us what? The 6th seal can't be the final battle, because at the 6th seal, they're all hiding. The 6th seal is actually near the beginning of it all. Now, if the 6th seal is on the day right before Sukkot starts, that means the other 5 seals must begin sometime just before. There are multiple scenarios to be mindful of for when and how it could all begin under this perspective. The one I lean to most is seeing Jerusalem get surrounded on the Day of Trumpets because of the Ark of the Covenant. This would be the Wakeup Event to call the 10 virgins as noted here in Matthew 25. Please see our teaching, What is the Idol of Jealousy, regarding the Ark of the Covenant with this event. We know the seals have been delayed, as noted in Revelation 10, with Yeshua holding the open scroll, and then we're informed there will be no more delay. This is Yeshua holding the open scroll that had the seals on it from chapter 6. But we see the scroll is now open, meaning the seals are all broken, but the events of those seals have been delayed from happening. As noted in some of our other teachings, the seals were broken on the day Yeshua ascended into heaven, 10 days before Shavuot. Then we see the Spirit given as a deposit of what's to come on Shavuot in the 2nd chapter of Acts. But again, though the seals were opened, Revelation 10 shows the events of the seals have been delayed. I've pondered several different timings on how long this delay could be. However, knowing Yahweh moves on His appointed times, it could be that things pick right back up where Yeshua left off with the Wakeup Event at the next appointed time after Shavuot. If this is the case, that would be the Day of Trumpets. Thus, trumpets could be when we see the Wakeup Event Yeshua noted in the parable of the 10 virgins in Matthew 25:6. The warning shout to wake everyone up. The Greek word for cry here is that of a shout, which is one of the definitions for this Greek word. It's only used 4 other times in all of Scripture. 2 of those 4 are in the sense of declaring a statement with intense passion. I say this because in the account of the 10 virgins, there is a message given with intense passion, equal to that of a shout. And please remember, the Hebrew for the Day of Trumpets is Yom Teruah, literally meaning day of shout. There's no word for a trumpet anywhere in the Hebrew text of Leviticus 23, and the word for shout is singular. Again, the day of shout. So, how appropriate would it be for the wake-up shout given to us in the parable of the 10 virgins to happen on the day of shout, traditionally known as the Day of Trumpets? Then, 10 days later, on the Day of Atonement, we see the first 5 seals burst into action, a time of utter chaos and horrible devastation, taking over the whole world, a time of tribulation. Then, just days later, the resurrection takes place on the official last day of the harvest, the day just before the Feast of Tabernacles, which just so happens to be the 14th day of the 7th month, the timing of the full moon. Now, why would I mention that? Because of what we see at the 6th seal. Revelation chapter 6, verse 12. I watched as he opened the 6th seal. There was a great earthquake. The sun turned black like sackcloth, made of goat hair. The whole moon turned blood red. This is covered in our teaching, the prayer of escape. Then we see he covers us with his tent in Revelation chapter 7. Now, all this being said, if we don't see something start by a future Day of Trumpets, or at least by a future Day of Atonement, then this theory is wrong. Or it can still be right, and we just need to be mindful of it every year. If it's correct, then on some future Day of Trumpets, Yeshua sends us the warning, that being Jerusalem being surrounded because of the Ark of the Covenant. Then the seals begin on the Day of Atonement. Thus, the tribulation will start on the Day of Atonement. If our theory on the length of the tribulation is correct, and it's only 1 year, then just as it starts on the Day of Atonement, it therefore concludes with the Battle of Armageddon on the Day of Atonement as well. Armageddon concludes with Yeshua cleaning house in Jerusalem. That's why he has blood on him when he crosses over the Mount of Olives. It starts at Mount Sinai and concludes in Jerusalem. This is covered in our 2-part teaching, Satan's Greatest Masquerade, Part 1 and 2. In closing, to give further support to the timing discussed in this teaching, please consider Yeshua's words giving hints to his return while he's on his way to be crucified. Luke 23:26. As they led him away, they seized Simon from Cyrene, who was on his way from the country, and put the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. A large number of people followed him, including women who mourned and wailed for him. Jesus turned and said to them, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children. For the time will come when you will say, 'Blessed are the barren women, the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never nursed.' Then they will say to the mountains, 'Fall on us,' and to the hills, 'Cover us.' For if men do these things when the tree is green," that being the springtime, "what will happen when it is dry?" He's referring to the end of the harvest season, what we refer to as the fall season. Thus, Yeshua is pointing to everything beginning at the fall feasts. This can't be overlooked. Now, for what it's worth, I believe it's very possible the Ark of the Covenant can come out before the Day of Trumpets. In fact, I kind of lean that way. However, I believe the Day of Trumpets will be when they place the Ark on the Temple Mount. Again, please see our teaching, What is the Idol of Jealousy? Well, that's all I have. Please, think about it. Pray about it. But more than anything, be a doer of the word and not a hearer only. Until next time, Shalom.